you got that? Oh. They leave it up. Like how often?
It's scheduled.
Oh, so even when it's closed. Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Get us. Good, that's
We'll take this and put it on.
Greetings. My name is Daniel Townsend. I am the freshman class here at the Holy Hill. Welcome to Chapel Tuesday here on the campus of American Baptist College. Our mission as a historically black college with a liberal arts emphasis is to educate, graduate, and prepare diverse students for Christian leadership, service, and social justice in the world. As an institution of higher education, we are committed to social justice, equity, advocacy, and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and members of the community, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we come together to celebrate the power of unity, compassion, and the pursuit of equality. In this sacred space, let us take a moment to reflect on the legacy of resilience, strength, and triumph that has been woven into the fabric of this esteemed institution. Let us invoke the spirit of activism and advocacy that has long defined the history of this institution and the broader struggle for social justice, equity, advocacy, and leadership. Our gathering is guided by our career development program, which seeks to empower students by equipping them with essential skills, knowledge, and resources to navigate the job market successfully. It helps them gain confidence, identify their strengths,
Make a better place for you and for me. Okay, I see some lips moving. We're gonna try it again, okay? I'm gonna let your lips move one more time. Let's do the chorus one more time. Here we go. Whoa, make a better place. That's it. For you and for me and the entire place. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. One more time, come on. Make it a better place for you and for me and the entire race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. One more time, I like that line. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Make a better place for you and for me. Make a better place for you and for me. Look at somebody and tell them that. Make a better place for you and for me. Now look at somebody else and tell them. Make a better place for you and for me. One more time, everybody. Make a better place for you and for me. I told you guys last week I don't thank everyone for coming out for our third installment of Black Gifted and Dope. And I am excited, as always, for the opportunity for us to have this conversation, this dialogue with the community. And so the purpose of Black Gifted and Dope is to expose our students to career pathways, and also for you guys to network, to meet people in the community who are doing wonderful things. So at this time, I am going to invite my panelists to the stage. And so you guys can make your way. Thank you guys so much. I believe the microphones are behind you. So this is a real informal conversation. I just would like for you guys to take the time to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about the organizations you represent, and how did you get to those positions that you're in? And we'll start with you, Dr. Lee.
All right. Well, this seems quite formal. We have Dr. Hildreth here. Dr. Harris here with us, and so this does seem formal, but nonetheless, though, good evening. I am the Reverend Dr. Omarion Lee. I am the Director of Spiritual Care for Nashville General Hospital and a pastor in the AME Church. I'm planting a church, New Work Fellowship in Mount Juliet, and also the proprietor of the Centers for Wellbeing mental health practice that I started last year. I think that's enough to get started.
Hi. I usually don't use mics. I'm Heather Tribble. I work at Youth Villages. I'm the state manager for our Kentucky-based programs, and also do private practice. So I work with premarital couples, couples counseling, and I do some individual work. I've been doing that for like the last 13 years here in Nashville and now Kentucky.
Testing, all right. My name is Trey Gupton. I am co-founder of the DREAM Initiative. That is a nonprofit that stands for Decreasing Recidivism Through Education and Mentorship. We are in all the TDOC prisons, and we have a reentry program focused on preparing those that within a year of release to get out successfully, job readiness, entrepreneurship, financial training, decision making, all of the things. I am the vice president at North Star Memorial Group, which is a national funeral services conglomerate. We own several hundred funeral establishments across America and Asia and a couple in China. And I am a local real estate investor. So I have a real estate business where I purchase, rehab, flip, own, rent properties. I'm a Nashville native, born and raised here. So been here all my life. And yeah, that's who I am and what I do.
Okay, thank you guys. So one of the things I want to talk about today is passion and purpose, and operating in those spaces. So passion and purpose are key to career pathways. So what advice do you have for individuals who aspire to work within their purpose or passion?
I guess I'll go first. I actually, on the way here, I was talking to a young man I met who took me back from Enterprise home, and I was just talking about compassion, and anyways, it's going to apply with that. But I think, you need to try a lot of different things to figure out what your passion is. So I'm passionate about children, families living successfully. So that's our mission at UPhilogist, and so that's why I've been there for the last 13 years, because I really care about families staying together, having the best time services so that they can be healthy families. And then especially working with kids that age out of foster care, knowing that they don't have a lot of resources, they don't have a lot of skills. Like every time, I'm so far removed from that being in leadership, but every time I see a young kid and I know they're doing well and they've gotten to college, like it just refuels why I do what I do and why I really care about these kids. So I would say try a lot of different things. Some things, I realize I don't like working with adults, so I don't typically see some types of adults in counseling. Like I just don't. But I have 3 children. I don't like little kids. I don't do therapy for little kids because that just doesn't make me excited every day. So find things that make you excited every day, and then align yourself with the companies or agencies that best fit what you believe in as well.
Yeah, I think that as far as when working in your passion or trying to identify that, I think especially it's good for this context for us to look at it from a theocentric space. Me being a pastor, but before being a pastor, I've always had a very strong connection with God and my walk with Christ. And so that helps to form everything else, right? And it's not going to be always pretty or always right, but having that will drive and fuel your purpose when you discover that. And so how does that align with your faith? How it aligns with Christ? How does it align with what you're pursuing? Because see, when you walk in your purpose and you live out your passion, I remember being in a gymnasium and hearing these super dudes do exactly what we're doing right now, right? Trying to sit up there and talk about if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But as a 13 to 20-year-old, that didn't resonate. It didn't make sense because the trappings of everything around you, money, cars, homes, all of that stuff, clothes, those things are what is fueling you. But then when you zone in and you tap into that, all of that other stuff becomes attainable because you're locked into what God has designed you to do, right? So that's really kind of how I move. Like I didn't even talk about real estate stuff or whatever, but because those are all of those things, it all goes back to how God has created me to be of service for Him in all those places. So then it makes other things get added to it. So my passion, I would say for me, my passion is being the best steward of what God provides me with and then serving Him.
That was great. It's hard to top that. One of the things I thought about as he was speaking was leaning into your journey, whatever that is. In my journey before I was who I am today, and it's always funny when I do these engagements, before I was any of the things that, I have today, I used to sell drugs in Nashville, a lot of drugs. And I got indicted you know, 13, 14 years ago and had to rebuild my life. Spent a couple years in prison. That was a part of my journey. And whatever your journey is for you, whatever, and when I say your journey, you know, your struggle, your story, a lot of times people find their passion in that. They want to go touch people that have been through what they've been through, right? And that is often very igniting for people. And I learned how to be a leader in prison. I found my passion in prison. I connected with Christ for real. I grew up in church my whole life, but I connected for real in prison, right? And that carried forward for me. So that's one of the things I thought about. And the other that crossed my mind is, when you're talking about your purpose and your passion, make sure it's your purpose and your passion, not what grandmama then told you or what your daddy wants you to do and all that, because we can have a purpose where we want to honor dad, we want to honor mom, we want to make them proud. But I would submit to you that the best way to do that is by fulfilling what you've really been called to be. And that might not be what they've identified in you, right? So there's a lot of people wanting to be X, Y, Z thing because it's been put in them. That's the expectation from whoever they look up to. And so, you know, be very self-aware. And I think that's an interesting journey of itself, just learning how to be self-aware and ask yourself what's really driving you. What really is your why? Why do I want to do this? Why am I saying this is my passion? And that will lead you down an interesting route.
Trey, I think something you said when you said the word call. A lot of times people attribute call to ministers and persons that are pursuing God as the leader of congregations. And I think we have to pay attention that we are all called to something. That's what I was saying with that theocentric part, that God is the center of it. He's called each of us to do something amazing where he gets the glory from it, right? And I think that's a key word. We gloss over that word call, you know, because we think that it's the calling only happens where the clouds part and and then people hear you say, you know, that the Lord has called me to preach. No, the Lord may have called you to be a surgeon, may have called you to reach back and to inspire those behind you, may have called you to play an instrument, may have called you to be a janitor. My grandmother once told us, she said, I don't care what you do, you be the best at whatever it is.
Yeah.
You be the best. If it's the janitor,
That's
you
right.
make sure nobody can outshine floors better than you. You bring a level of excellence to it. And that's how your purpose really manifests, I think.
That's really good, because sometimes we have students here who are on one trajectory and then it changes over. And so when we bring guests, everyone wants to tell the good story about, you know, this is what I do and this is how I do it and I made it and you can make it too. But it goes a little deeper than just getting there, the journey part of it. So was there a time where you thought, I know you mentioned you were a drug dealer, but was there a time where you thought you were on a different path?
Yeah, so I was a very unconventional, quote unquote, drug dealer. So you would have never known, you know, a lot of people know Ghost nowadays from, you know, the show, like I was that, like nobody knew. When it hit TV, and I got indicted, it was all who knew that, then they knew. But I was unconventional in the sense that I didn't want to be a drug dealer. A lot of young kids now that I deal with, they actually aspire to do that, right? That's what's cool to them, right? I actually had business aspirations, and it was just a means to an end. I didn't do it so that you could know or anybody could know. I was never pulling up to any club. You were not going to see rims on my cars and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to buy property, right? So, but what I found was actually a pastor brought me into go into the prison with him, and I started going with him on somewhat of a routine basis, and I just would sit and watch him minister, and the impact that it had on guys and what it did really hit me. And for the first time, I rationalized what I did, because I only sold weed. That was my thing, right? I said, I'm gonna sell weed. You know, I feel less harmless than Burger King, right? So I ain't hurt nobody. It's all good, right? And that was my thing. But I did it at a massive scale, right? Which you're gonna have negative effect. There's a downstream effect to that for the people who are not just conducting business, right? And the kids in the projects who are gonna fight over this and all this other kind of stuff, and not to mention who you're funding on the other side of the border. So when that happened for me, is when, I remember one night leaving, I said, man, I can't be on the wrong side of the law and come in here and wanna represent God to these guys who are already suffering the consequences on being on the wrong side of the law, right? And so for me, that was a moment where it was one of the first times where I really had an issue with it in terms of it being, because I didn't have a problem with it being a means to an ends for me, right? And I miscalculated greatly. I didn't know that they would indict it and treat it the way that they did, because I thought it was just weak. But they treated it like I was Pablo Escobar. And but for me, yeah, kind of like what he said. Once I felt a calling to do something different that was separate from my goals and my financial aspirations, that was related to impact, and the two didn't go together, right? That for me was when I felt that, yeah, you're on the wrong journey, right? You're going about this the wrong way. And then, you know, anything where you have to be duplicitous, you gotta check yourself. Whatever that is, right? If you gotta be duplicitous to do it, no matter how you rationalize it, you're on the wrong journey, right? And whatever that is. And so that for me was, yeah, that was a moment for me where I recognized that your intentions may be great, but you're on the wrong journey. You're not gonna be able to have the impact that you are starting to get a taste for, right? And do what you're doing this way. And yeah, that, yeah, it was a journey for me.
Was that the same for you, Heather? Did you have another dream that you had to transition?
Not necessarily. I think I always, when my mom says when I was 7, I told her I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and then I quickly learned I didn't want to do all this like medical school. But I've always known, like since I was a kid, I remember when my parents got divorced and my mom like legit shut herself in a room and cried. I remember like the priest coming over and talking to her, and as a kid trying to like minister to my mom. I had a little sister, and so as a kid I've always just wanted to help people, and so I have navigated like, what does that mean? Does that mean nursing? But it's really, for me, it's about individual counseling, but then doing community work with families and children. I especially love teenagers. I was in our Louisville office last week, and we had a youth panel of young people that are aging out of foster care, and just like the impact of our programs. One young lady is like, I have no parent figures. I have no one to talk to. I'm 18. I'm trying to figure out life in college. And so knowing that, you know, that my staff is like impacting her, it just like feels good. And so I just had to figure out what does helping people look like, and then seeing like, you know, I'm not strong in math and science, so you also have to know your strengths. And then I find happiness where I'm at, because I know I'm doing something good. For every 9 kid that cusses me out and says they don't care about what I'm saying, I got 1 kid that's doing well. And so every day that's like, okay, this is why I keep showing up, because if there's 1 kid I can impact and change the trajectory of their lives, then I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm, you know, not in ministry or anything else, but I feel like this is, you know, this is what God wants me to do. And so I feel success. I feel like I've seen success because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I feel like I could do other things, but am I truly happy? Am I doing what, you know, God wants me to do? So that's just a little bit about my change.
Yeah, I've changed streets, I've changed maps, I've done so many different things to ultimately get to where I am now. But they all still come back and align to what it is, and I think what it comes out to really just falling with what my purpose is, you know, in my service to God. He's brought it around and made it, just made it central. Not good with math, right? Well, reasonably, I don't have the focus to do, you know, classroom math. And so I ended up getting an English degree. So I was a theater major and a dance major in undergrad and a theater major, and went from there getting an English degree. So I thought I was going to go to law school, you know, and ended up not going to law school, but starting a nonprofit and running it well for a decade. And from there, God was like, that ain't what I'm asking you to do, to go into seminary, right? And from there, pastoring and finding out that's not what all God is asking me to do, and moving into therapy and counseling and into chaplaincy, all of those things, right? And And what I hear and constantly seeing just from the trajectory is that he's wanted me to just be available to be of service to people by his hand, right? And so he's put me in all of you ever you notice that how like you know so much about so many different things. You know, you may know about, not me, but you may know about carpentry. You may know about how to change tires or do some auto mechanics. You know how to, may know a little bit about preaching and history and things like that. So it takes and put all of those things together from those experiences to how you get to right here, what the purpose is and how it all adds up to make it come together for the good of the Lord, you know. So that's how I've seen, or you know, instead of getting down about the past and how they change, some people get lost in the fact that, well, I thought that's what I was supposed to do, or a failure, or an extra year in school, or an extra semester, you know what I'm saying? Those things, or having to go and be incarcerated. They get stuck in those things, and they miss the opportunity to see that God is probably saving you from something, and also is redirecting you in some ways too, right? That opportunity, what you think was for your bad, it really is for your good. It's an opportunity. And so what do you do with it still, you know? It took me 7 years to finish my MDiv, you know, and that's wild. But I had to see it through, right? You know, it's just something about completing the process and what happens on the other end, no matter what it is, whether it's jail, whether it's college, whether it's being a family man or woman. You know, you have to see that process all the way through, and that's where the revelation comes. That's where what God is doing is on the other side in that whole journey, this whole thing of life. Go too far with that.
That's okay. Well, I do want to ask you guys, because this month is September is Suicide Awareness Month. And so when you guys are all talking about what you do, you talk about ministering to people and dealing with their mental health. And so how do you promote mental health in your communities as faith leaders and counselors?
That's a little tough question. So it's a tough question because my sister-in-law just completed suicide a couple months ago. So for me, being a professional, it's like, how did I miss that? And I think sometimes when you're in the midst of family dysfunction, you can miss that. So I'm working through that myself. Like, how did I not recognize that she was this bad? But especially, you know, when I see couples and do individual work, you know, we do screeners. I talk to people. Like, you know, I do screener. You know, where are you at today? I think it's important to check in, even if you're not a professional, like recognizing the signs and symptoms. So I think I've had to take a bigger stance in like really recognizing those things, and even checking my own mental health. Like, how am I doing? It's a lot to hear, you know, to hear people's problems and knowing the things that other people go through. So like taking self-care is a big thing that I promote. I try to lead by example. I work 2 jobs. I have 3 children. And so I try to make sure that I'm like taking care of myself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So I think self-care is really important. But then even the programs we work with, we do a lot of suicide awareness. And so that means just like really checking in on people, making sure they have access to medications or therapy if they need it. But then really teaching like coping skills and self-care, I think is really important. And so you have to take care of yourself before you can impact anyone else in a good way.
And I'll piggyback right on that. I did my dissertation work on self-care for pastors, basically, right? Caring for the caregiver is a very important thing. And so we have to working in the hospital, really push that forward with our nursing staff, with our providers, of how are you, and dialing back just to take a few moments, and honoring when people don't feel good. When they say, I'm not happy, I'm not in a good place, I feel bad, and say that's okay, and be reaffirming in that, just to be supportive, and so it's for me, promoting it is putting it out in my social spaces. People are on their phones and on social media all day. I know I'm one of them, right? but I also try to drive my algorithm to send positive affirmation messages to me, and those are the kind of things that I put in my story. So like those that follow me will get those things a few times during the week, so they may not be getting it anywhere else. And then also making sure that I'm promoting networks of therapists. The Black Mental Health Village is a part of a village that I'm engaged in, and making sure that persons of our community have access to that, and understanding and promoting it. Reaffirm, I affirm you that it was not for you to know, okay? And so you don't need to own that, you know? And so taking those moments to push it and to not make mental health taboo. When I I was at a church, one of our churches, it was a Baptist church, speaking with the men's ministry and talking to them about what their grandsons and granddaughters are doing when they're practicing mindfulness and yoga and when they're journaling. I said it's the same thing as you make your prayers and supplications, and when you fall on your knees and you pray a good Dr. Watts prayer, and you know when you are engaged that way, that's how they're engaging God. And if you want to be connected with them, you gotta allow your mind to expand some and to channel that. So finding ways to make mental health not taboo and make it living room conversation is what I try to do every day. You know, not just this month, but every day.
I just want to piggyback. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you were talking about not making it taboo, and I think one of the myths people have about, you talk about suicide is going to make them more likely to commit suicide, and that's a complete myth. But also, like at my sister-in-law's funeral, like the pastor led with talking about that she committed suicide, and like I was like mortified, like why are we telling this auditorium full of people, right, that this is how she died, you know? And so the more I thought about it, and I said, people need to know this is why she felt like she was struggling, because we weren't listening, or we weren't recognizing some of the signs of that. And so my brother had a table for mental health resources, and so the more the service went on, I mean, everybody kind of got there and talked about her struggles with the mental health, and then I recognized things I was seeing that I didn't take that for what it was. But then I was like, well, this is important. This is why we need to talk for, it's like 200 people in this auditorium. Everyone needs to hear about, you know, my sister-in-law was the most smilingest person ever. She was the auntie. Every time I go home, all the siblings, all the kids, we all go to their house, and she is the biggest host, and she's the smiliest person, but she was suffering inside and didn't feel like she could tell us. And so just the fact that, you know, I was worried about the impression it was going to leave on our family that this is the decision Kai made. It was like we were telling 200 other people, like, you do not have to suffer like this. There are people, family, friends, and professionals that can help you through this journey. And so just kind of speaking about the taboo part, I always felt like that, like this is embarrassing, but like people need to know like that you can ask for help. You don't have to just smile that everything's okay, because there's many days I don't feel okay, and so I've got friends and my husband, I can just be like, all right, today's a hard day, so we need to figure this out.
Yeah, and I would say to that, right? So let's take a moment and really unpack that, the tabooness of it. We can talk about a person that may be thinking about committing suicide, or a person that is depressed, that has some anxieties. So we all have them. We all have them. And what we traditionally heard in the church, well, we can pray it away. You know, we can just take it to God and leave it there. We need to pray more. You need to read your Bible, or those things. And those are good exercises. That you know, those are good exercises. But sometimes people need a little bit more. Sometimes people need a person to go and talk to, need a safe space, a grouping of persons that don't bring any judgment, bring listening and not responding. It may be sometimes people might need some medication. I mean, just imagine, think about it from this perspective. Those of you that have a good, strong tolerance or pain threshold, you may stub your toe, hurt your ankle, but you don't take any medication for it because, you know, you kind of work through it. You're probably able to really work through it the younger you were. Now, think about it. You go all day long. You've been walking with this hurt ankle. You've gone up and down stairs. You've done all of these tasks. You've taken care of home, children, all of this stuff. You've driven to and fro, all of that. But how much better is it once you maybe, you know, if you're able to take ibuprofen or take something for pain relief, once you've done so, how that eases it, right? Think about mental health in that perspective. Mental health leads to it, there's disease that's there. So if I need to talk to someone or if I need to take some medication, that's not something to be ashamed of. We shouldn't make persons that need to be or that utilize those measures feel ashamed. We should support them the same way we support everything else, right?
Absolutely. And do you encounter?
Yeah, I think they've really answered the main thing that is just still the biggest is just speaking on it so that it is not taboo. Just saying that it is real, equating it to like physical sickness. You would not feel down on somebody if they got cancer or got a flu, that it is very real. On top of that, I was thinking about a couple of very interesting instances that are very different, whereas earlier this year, one of Nashville's, probably Nashville's most prominent businessmen, I won't say his name, but he was a mentor, we called him OG, and he committed suicide. And this is a man who lived in a governor's club, had achieved everything that you could imagine achieving. He was a giver, he had impact, and he still committed suicide. You know, it's real. And speaking on the fact that there's not a level of possessions or attainment or achievement that you can get that whoops mental sickness, right? It's just like you can't go work out and defeat cancer. You can't go for a run and make cancer go away. And in the same way, there are not achievements or money or things that you can do. There's not a relationship that you can have, a guy or girl that you can get that will whoop mental illness. And on the other side of that, recently in a prison not too far from here, there was a guy who came to my weekly service there, and he did not make parole, and his wife left him. And he had been in a few years and was about to do a few more at least. And he attempted suicide. You know, fortunately he didn't, you know, he wasn't successful, but he's on suicide watch now. And so these things are real, and looking at the just the spectrum, right, of it is not always situational. It is not always something that a person can control or they're choosing or as a result of bad decisions. We know that those things have an effect. So speaking on the context of all of it so that it's real for people and they really can absorb it. And then one of the bigger things that, you know, I do personally is, you know, in those settings, share what my own struggles have been with that so that they can see, you know, we all, and you know, he mentioned social media in the days now, everybody's their own PR agent. So you're seeing everybody living their best life, right? You're seeing their best days, their best outfit, and that's psychologically challenging, right? Because you do an automatic comparison thing, especially young minds do that, right? So they're constantly weighing themselves against what they're seeing. And so there's a constant feeling of missing out or FOMO, whatever they call it. And so, you know, speaking on those things and just the awareness and being willing to be transparent and show your scars, right, is really big for people, so that you can prompt them to be willing to get the help, to reach out and do the thing that they need to do, right? In church circles, same thing. Sometimes praying ain't enough. Sometimes reading the Bible ain't enough. You need a therapist, somebody who's psychologically trained to help you and prescribe what you need on that journey. And so I think that's really the biggest part of what, you know, what I do is speaking on it, even in those circles, even in ministry, that, you know, depression is a real thing, just like a cold is a real thing.
Yes.
You can be spiritual, you can be saved, we all believe in Jesus, but you still got a cold, you still got the flu,
Here.
right?
Yes.
You don't deny that you got the flu. It's an actual thing that you have, right? And so making it where they can really see it like that and absorb it in that way, where they don't feel bad about it, don't feel less than as a Christian, as a man, as a whatever, right? And I think it's a really big deal, because like I said, I mean, if it can get, you know, I've seen it get the best of them. You know, I was blown away when that man, you know, when he committed suicide, it blew everybody away, because you just can't imagine somebody with that type of life and that type of impact, loved in the way that he was, would feel the need, but it's real, right? And so I think that's what we can do about it, is promoting and speaking on it, and we do that. I do that pretty regularly because it is an epidemic now, you know. And COVID, of course, made it worse for everybody, the isolation and all those factors. So it's a real thing that we're dealing with.
Okay, well, I was gonna say one more, sorry. I think having a good support system is important. So after I had my second child, I was like, wasn't postpartum, but I was borderline. It was a struggle, and you know, my husband going back to work and adjusting. And so when I had our last child, I talked about that in supervision, license supervision. And so they were like, what do you need? And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna tell my husband, here are the things I need from you. And I'm going to, you know, open the blinds, and me and the baby are gonna go on a walk. It was a summer baby. Like, so I had all these things lined up. And then my friends were really intentional about calling me and coming over and seeing me. And even when I said it's okay, my friends were like, I know you're not okay, so we're gonna sit on this phone, we're gonna talk about it. So I feel like having a really good support system. I'm in therapy now. I tell people like all the time, like, that's fine. I need to talk to someone. And it started from grief counseling when my dad passed from COVID, and now it's just like work stress. Like, I'm growing a whole state, and so there's like a lot of work pressure, and sometimes I need to just talk about that, or seeing clients in the private practice, like that feels heavy. I'm like, I need someone else to talk to about this. So like, no, don't be ashamed. I was screaming from the mountaintops, like, I gotta go to therapy. So like, you can't put this on my calendar, because like, I love seeing her. Every time I saw her yesterday, I was like, I couldn't wait to talk to you, because like, let's talk about all the stuff that's going on. And so I feel refreshed and recharged, and she's giving me skills of like how to manage my anxiety. Like I struggle with anxiety sometimes, just the pressure of like work. And so I think it's important to have a good support system, and being honest and saying like, it's okay to ask for help.
I think the one thing you said in that too, that's key, Heather, is that being excited to talk to your therapist. One of the things that happens in our community is trying to remove the taboo or the misnomer around it, is that we equate a price to things that's tangible. We don't actually get to put it in our hand. It's not real. So paying for therapy does not register as something important, right? With or without insurance, paying for therapy is just as important as buying, George, I tell everybody, if I can buy J's, I can pay for therapy. If I can, go out and have a good meal, I can pay for therapy, because that's not gonna last. It's gonna go away, right? But what I get from that therapist is gonna give me what I need to go and generate the resources to do those things again, right? So we have to understand that there's a cost to things, and that it's okay for those things to happen, because it should anything that's worth having, we should pay for, right? So engage it.
Well, I certainly understand that, but when we're talking to college students who may not be able to afford J's or therapy, right?
Right.
And so as American Baptist College, one of the things that we believe in is SEAL, which is social justice, equity, advocacy, and leadership. Mental health encompasses all of those things. So how do you incorporate those principles in dealing with people with those types of challenges? With mental health challenges, or the ability to afford to go see a mental health expert.
Right. So I think that, I'm sorry, I'm just old school. Whatever you want, you're gonna put your money behind it. You're gonna go and do it. I was a college student, been a college student several times over, and been dead broke a whole lot. Didn't have anybody to help me do anything when it came to that. I had the student loans that came with that, $250,000 worth. And because of hard work, I don't have it anymore. But the thing is that you look at investing in yourself. So what does that look like? That means go and find those services. Find who will provide the resources for you. If I want to figure out how I'm going to buy Jordans, I'm not talking about in the place where I am now, right? If I want to go and get a car, some rims, when I was in college, we was using refund money to do everything, right? But if my mental health is important to me, or if my physical health is, if getting out there with them gals is important to me, then that needs to be important to me, right? So what we have to do is start normalizing taking care of myself, what really counts, and not just begging for what I need, you know what I'm saying, and buying what I want. And so we have to be real about that whole thing. Now, I get it. There are persons that that, I mean, I'm from North Nashville, 12th and Buchanan, so you don't get much poor, okay? Came out of there and was born in 79, so in the height of brothers being incarcerated and being ran down, I was right there coming out of it. So you can't tell me that if you don't want to really do better, that you can't. You know, you find and align yourself with those persons that will assist you to get to where you need to. If a young person came to me and wanted therapy, needed support, I'm gonna make sure they get what they need. You know what I'm saying? You have to actually go out there and pursue what it is that you want. And that's not looking for a handout or expecting anyone to take care of you. But you have to be real about what it is that you show up to do. That circles back to walking in your purpose, right? If it's something that you believe that God has designed you to do, you're not going to let anyone tell you that it can't happen. But the things that we can't see, that aren't tangible, we're willing to not put the investment into them.
I often echo what he's saying, that, you know, I would challenge folks that if you audit your budget, you probably can find room for something to reprioritize something more important. On the flip side of that, what I would say is, you know, kind of to your question about those who just don't have access to it, is one of the interesting things about therapy, and I'm in therapy just like he said, and I share that with men, and, you know, I try to provide context where you would never look at a fit person that's in shape and ask them why they're going to the gym, right? Therapy is something, you don't do it necessarily because something's wrong. You do it to maintain emotional and mental fitness and awareness, right? So, and one of the things that's very healthy about therapy is that you have a person that you can sit down and tell the real truth to. Because everybody that you're in a relationship with, you're in a very interesting dance, right? Where I need you to believe and see me a certain way. So that affects what I can tell you, right? With your therapist, that's not the case. They are there to hear all of how you really feel. And so like I tell a lot of black men in prison, man, black man, find somebody, one person that you can just sit down and tell the real deal to, right? How you're really feeling. The Bible talks about bearing each other's burdens. You can't do that if you don't tell anybody anything, right? So what I try to do is foster communities, because in prison, you're right, they don't have access. There ain't no therapists in there, right? But what you can do is create community understanding where they know you're going to have to create this with each other, right? You're going to have one person. And when you're in prison, oftentimes it's therapeutic because you're in that room with your cellie a lot. You know what I mean? And so all the mirages are gone. All of who you thought you were is gone, right? So there's nobody left to impress. And so there's an opportunity to be very honest, very self-aware, and it can be very cathartic. So creating that opportunity inside of communities and telling them, like, man, if you got a real friend, you need to sit down and have somebody that you can just tell the truth. Man, this is how I really feel. This is what really scares me. This is what really motivates me to act this way, right? And a therapist's job is to get you to share those things in a very volunteer way. So the more you talk, you'll paint a picture and you'll see yourself a little bit different. Because I guarantee you there's stuff about yourself that you're just not saying out loud, right? A lot of people, it takes a lot of courage to unpack your stuff, right? And spirituality in church can put a nice covering over that stuff, right? And so I challenge everybody, like I said, to, go seek therapy, reprioritize, it's worth it. And it doesn't mean something's wrong. My life is great, but I go to therapy because, just as we said, just because things are great don't mean you're great on the inside, right? And even if I am great on the inside, I want to keep it that way, right? And so, that's one of the things I do is try to create community and the understanding that you need another human that you can tell the truth to. And even if they're not trained, just as he mentioned, just somebody that can listen and hear you, not judge you, and you can just get it out and verbalize it is a very powerful and cathartic thing just by itself.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I have a client who always tells me, I write you in my budget, like Heather in my budget, and she's like, it's important for her, so I do agree with that. But then also, there's like platforms called like Open Path where, you can get a therapy session for as low as like $30. There's other, mental health agencies that do have sliding fee scales for people who don't have insurance or who, don't have the income to afford therapy. So there's platforms you can connect with people here on campus. I can make sure I leave my information with Ms. Nicole. So there's ways that we can help connect you all to the people you need. And so There's always, I always say, find a yes that matters. We'll help find a way. I think it's the only way we help our communities is if we, there's people like myself, therapists, and, that make sure that we have room for clients who can't afford to pay. And so there's access out there. You just have to seek it out.
And I think the piece that I want to make sure that's clear about it, money is a tool. It's just a construct, right? So, and I know that if we can't put more value on it than what it is. Yes, it'll allow you to do certain great things or many things or whatever, but it's a tool and it's just one in your box or it may not be in your box right now. So, use all the rest of your tools to the best of your ability and you'll still get to the same place, right? It's, if you need some support, reach out to the person that can probably best do so and help you. Look and find some of those resources that may give a sliding scale, but the point of all of that is that don't be afraid because something has a cost to it that you're not worthy of attaining it.
Thank you. I just want to leave some room for questions. Anyone has any questions for our panelists? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is okay.
We can't hear you, you have to come to the microphone so they can hear you online, so you have to come up close and get to the microphone, sir. Mr. Holland.
Well, I just had a comment. I currently go to therapy myself too. I've been going for 2 years. And a resource at my job is they got an employee assistance program, and you get like 5 free sessions. So I was like, if someone, they feel like they can't afford it, that's probably a resource that they could use.
They need to hear that. They need to hear that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Or comments.
Oh, comments. How about that? Yes. Thank you. No? All right. Well, I just wanted to thank you guys. I would love to have you all come back because I think there's a deeper conversation that we need to have about the Black community and mental health. And so I would love to welcome you all back and thank you so much for coming at this time. So thank you. Dr. Harris?
Let me say thank you too. Let's give them another hand. Thank you so much. This has been very deeply resourceful for all of us in different kinds of ways and at different levels of our creating space for integrity in a growth and healing way as you seek to have clarity about your life. And if you can be integritous, if you can be honest with yourself whatever relationships you have, those are the ways in which I found for myself to be very important. So thank you for elevating the level of integrity, being whole and complete. And we are grateful for this career and dope. Black, gifted, and dope. Okay. Not that. But in college, the reefer move, we thought that was harmless too. We just didn't get caught. We just doing, but dope is good. Well, no. So, thank you so much. Thank you.
If you all would please stand for the reading and the singing of our alma mater. Before we begin, 2 brief announcements. As you know, next 2 weeks we will not be having Chapel Tuesdays because of our reading period. So you will catch us after the next 2 weeks. We love you,
shall bow.